There you go. Hey everybody, my name is Bryan Zamzow. My degree is Music Education and Wellness. And before I begin this presentation, I have to thank my advisors, Stephen McAlpine, our many intellectually stimulating conversations. We came up with enough ideas probably like for half a dozen Capstone projects. Harvey Jackson, a long-standing mentor of mine, has really supported me along the way. Dr. Cella, who came on board last minute and has always been there, really shaped me as a musician as well, offered me plenty of new tools as a career musician. Dr. Freeland, you've been there through so many times of doubt, offered me that reassurance that I really needed. Thank you so much for that. And Professor Brown, you really helped me shape this thing into a clear, cohesive project, what it's become now. So thank you for that. And all my peers who've walked with me along the way. So I want to start this by asking you all a question. Can you relate to this experience where you sit down to do some challenging activity? Maybe you are writing, you're creating a work of art, performing playing a musical instrument, or maybe a sport, where you get so engaged in this activity, you're doing it for a few minutes, where you decide to check the time, and you see that an hour has passed by. It wasn't a couple of minutes. 2 hours passed by, 3 hours. You were so in the zone, you lost track of time. Who can relate to that? Yeah. So this is what a psychologist would call a flow state. It's what we all know as being in the zone, completely immersed and engaged in activity. So why am I talking about flow? Well, I'm a musician, I'm a music teacher, and I've been teaching guitar privately for about 10 years. And I've noticed a pattern among my adult students that have minimal musical background. They're not coming to take guitar lessons to be great at the instrument. They're coming for something else. And I've noticed they describe experiences in the lesson that are very reminiscent of a flow state. They say such things as, wow, time really flew by. Or they're playing a challenging piece and they have a breakthrough and they say, wow, I didn't even have to try. My hands just played the song. I don't know where that came from. Very reminiscent of a flow state. And additionally, they're implicating that they feel better somehow. They might say, I feel more awake after a lesson, or I feel invigorated or calmer. One student even said, you should measure my blood pressure before and after because I swear it goes down after a lesson. So this led to my research question. I wanted to find out whether and how a music teacher might be able to facilitate flow states in order to increase well-being. So here's how I did that. I had to unpack that question a little bit. So I conducted a literature review, secondary research of over 30 sources, in which I tried to find out what is well-being. It's actually a really difficult term to define. Can flow states contribute to well-being, and can flow states be willingly facilitated for music students? And if so, how? And secondly, I used an interdisciplinary approach to interpret this data and to come to a better understanding of what I found. So to conduct a literature review, I followed an interpretivist framework, which basically means we're studying human attitudes and experiences in their natural environment. It's highly qualitative. Flow states and well-being are two very qualitative, subjective ideas. So there's not much quantitative measurability there. So the two key disciplines I followed were from psychology and music. We're looking at flow, well-being, and in music we're looking at a term that musicians describe as being in the groove or in the pocket, and I'm going to talk about that in a couple of slides. So what is a flow state? Well, we talked about how it's in the zone. It's a term proposed by a Hungarian psychologist, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's a humanistic psychologist, and he set out to find out what makes people happy. And he was particularly intrigued with mountain climbers who took extraordinary risk for this state that they would describe as, many of them described it as what Maslow would call a peak experience, where they lose track of themselves, they're completely immersed in the climb. And there are 9 descriptive conditions that Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi laid out for this flow state. And I'm underlining descriptive because it's important to emphasize this is not a prescriptive list. You can't read this list and fulfill each one of these factors and enter a flow state. Csikszentmihalyi stated that a flow state is, there's no shortcuts to flow. And that still holds true today from what we understand. Now, the reason I highlighted 4 of these is because these have some tangibility, some controllability. The challenge-skill balance, clear goals, immediate feedback, full concentration, and this one here, intrinsic motivation. That's not really tangible, but that's been found to be a strong predictor of a flow state. People who do activities for their own sake. Okay? So what is well-being? This is what many scholars call a muddy term, difficult to define and even harder to measure. there's all these different terms: subjective well-being, quality of life, perceived quality of life. There have been studies that simply try to define well-being. So I found one construct that was very cohesive by Martin Seligman. He is the founder of the positive psychology movement. He's a former APA, president of the American Psychological Association. And what stood out in this construct is flow is right there, it's engagement. It's a key part of the Martin Seligman's well-being theory. I'm going to get back to that in a minute. So first I want to talk about this interdisciplinary research approach that I used. There are 5 steps in the process. You identify the approach. Is it instrumental or critical? Instrumental meaning it's problem-driven, critical meaning it's society-driven. Secondly, we're going to create common ground between conflicting concepts across the disciplines. And then we're going to bridge the disciplines in order to form a more comprehensive understanding. And finally, we're going to set out to test this new understanding. So the approach in this project is instrumental interdisciplinary because it's problem-driven. The problem being, how can we increase well-being in these students actively? The hypothesis being that facilitating flow states in these students increases their well-being. And here's the common ground strategy that we used. Remember when I said in music, the key term is being in the groove or being in the pocket? How many musicians are in here? Just curious. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, a few of us. This is a term that you'll find many jazz musicians describe. And they describe it as a mystical kind of experience where they are one with the music is flowing through them, it's completely effortless. Some even describe it as an experience of God, okay? It's, again, very reminiscent of a flow state, but we can see there's no connection between the psychological concept of flow, which is a key part of well-being, and as a musician trying to increase well-being, we need well-being to be relevant in music, but there's no connection right now, so we're going to make that connection. We need to redefine groove, which I'm proposing is the same thing as flow. So we're using redefinition. William Newell at the University of Miami laid this out and described redefinition as being used when 2 concepts mean the same thing, but they're not effectively communicating to each other. So when we redefine groove as meaning flow, that makes well-being theory relevant to music. So well-being is being extended into the discipline of music. Extension is another concept for creating common ground. So that offers our explanation of the problem. This is the bridging strategy, bridging the disciplines. We're attempting to bridge the explanation-action gap. So the explanation is that we need to find a way to increase well-being in adult, non-professional musicians, correct? And the hypothesis is that we can do that by offering music lessons. We're going to get back to this in a minute. So here's what I found in the literature review. There is one work that explores the PERMA model of well-being and music engagement, just one. It's a literature review, and the conclusion is that music engagement contributes to all 5 factors of Seligman's well-being model: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. I thought it was very interesting that this is the only one because it seems like such a cohesive model of well-being. I decided to email Dr. Seligman himself. He's the author of the PERMA model. And I asked him if he's aware of any current research or new research being done on this subject, and his response was, not yet, but they are in discussion with several music outlets. So it sounds like it's coming. It sounds like we're going to begin to see research being conducted using the PERMA model of well-being in music. And here are some key insights that I found along the way. Several studies suggest that flow can positively contribute to well-being. Subjective well-being, which again is a different definition than the PERMA model, but it's moving us in the right direction, right? We also found that flow is contagious from music teachers to students. Now what that really means is the more often a music teacher experiences flow, there's a positive correlation with how often their students experience flow. And there's a number of reasons behind that. And finally, there was a particular study that, this is the only one I found that asked the question, how can we facilitate flow in music? And although the methods were questionable in this study, they did uncover 5 predictors and they offered suggestions for how to possibly facilitate these flow states for music students. There are a number of challenges in this research. The big one that I found was the research question was slightly flawed. Reason being, there's an implication here that if we facilitate flow, even if we can successfully do that, then well-being increases. But that's not the case. In Seligman's model of well-being, none of the factors alone can define well-being, which means flow alone doesn't define well-being. It must be present with the other 4 factors. Secondly, there are no primary resources that explore, the PERMA model. That was a big challenge in and of itself. So I kind of had to twist the information to possibly fit that model. Third, even if we can facilitate flow, how do we identify it in the real world? The way they identify it in research is an extensive questionnaire after the fact. So even though I have students in front of me that seem to be describing flow experiences, I can't be certain they're actually experiencing flow. And finally, I did not find a conclusive answer on how to facilitate flow. There are hints, there are predictors of flow, and there are suggestions, but they haven't been tested yet. So therefore, I accomplished explaining the problem. I did not accomplish giving us an exact method for fulfilling the problem. I can't say that this will work. Maybe it does, but it needs to be further explored. And I fulfilled the first 4 steps of the interdisciplinary process. I got as far as forming a more comprehensive understanding, but I was unable to test that understanding. But I do think it's possible. And it sounds like with Seligman's new research, that could be right around the corner. So just for fun, based on the predictors of flow that I found in the research, I decided to throw up some facilitating factors. I brainstormed this with my mentors, and here's what we came up with. Distraction-free environment conducive to intense focus. Set challenging goals and experience goals. And what that means is you're not just looking to reach a certain skill level, but you're reaching for a particular experience, because a predictor of flow has been an emotional expression in music, a strong predictor of flow. Constructive technical feedback from a strengths perspective. Now, what that means is in music, you need to have skill development. You need to have constructive feedback. And sometimes that can be hard to take. It's frustrating. It's difficult. And when you get frustrated, frustration takes you away from the possibility of entering flow. It brings you to anxiety, contrary to flow. Now, strengths perspective, that's a concept from social work, and that means building off of an individual's strengths as opposed to focusing on pathology. So I'm proposing there that if we offer constructive feedback from a strengths perspective, we're bypassing that anxious response, that frustrated response, potentially. Jamming, composition, and ensemble. Another strong predictor of flow has been playing in groups, improvisation, and composition. And as I stated earlier, emotional meaning is another strong predictor. So selecting music that has strong emotional meaning to the student could possibly facilitate this with me. Is that going on for a while? I apologize.
No, you just...
Okay.
So thank you very, very much, Bryan. Questions from the floor?
Can you give me an idea like what kind of instrument you would use to measure getting to that flow, or?
The research instruments?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a number of them. They have different names, and I don't know them off the top of my head. I think there's about 5 flow questionnaires. They go through a series of questions that hint at those 9 descriptors of flow. I actually haven't even had a chance to get my hands on them, but I know there's a number of them.
You can email them along, couldn't you? I remember we looked at this, but you'd be able to email them if you're interested.
Oh,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could give them up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then would it be a different instrument for a different audience, or because I see your connection here just from my experience in healthcare, and they'll have someone come in and play a harp or do some kind of music for particularly it was oncology patients.
Right.
And it really did look like they saw there was a definite positive correlation just from them hearing it. And then actually at one rehab that I worked at, they would teach piano. They would teach guitar. They would actually teach the patients to participate in.
Right.
So I'm just curious, I guess what would be your target audience? Is it for people who are very well, and or there's are they sick, or I don't know, are they children, are they adults, or?
I'm glad you're asking me that. So I had to distinguish how this isn't music therapy, first of all, because it sounds like music therapy.
Okay.
Music therapy is targeting pathology for the most part. I didn't find any research that music therapy contributes to well-being, meaning giving somebody tools to flourish. Start from 0 and get to +5. And that's what I was interested in. How do you take a person who doesn't have any major health complaints, but they want to improve their quality of life. So getting from 0 to +5. And I was focusing specifically on adults because because my students and my experience, adults are the ones that seek music for something greater like that, along those lines.
Bryan, has this study affected your own experience of flow in your own playing of music?
Well, yeah, it has. And it's not what I thought it was, because I've experienced less flow since beginning this project. And I have a few of my own hypotheses. Actually, in the project I experienced flow, but in music, I've been a little bit more disconnected from music because of this research, more on the intellectual side. And for me, flow comes when I completely let go. When I let go of intellect and analysis, and I just go and play. So yeah, I have seen a relationship here.
Thank you.
Following on that,
Yeah.
you said, can you go back one slide?
Sure.
So you said maybe I missed it, maybe it's a few back. You said that one of the things that could help flow was the music teacher's access to flow.
Right, exactly.
So if measuring flow or trying to measure flow disconnects you from it as the music teacher, wouldn't that be counterproductive for you trying to encourage it in your students?
That's what I've learned, because I've observed less of those experiences in my students in those lessons. Ever since I've been experiencing less flow, I haven't gotten any feedback from students that are along these lines of flow or increased well-being. It's just we learn music, you know. It's kind of back to that, just the music lesson. Dr. Freeland.
I mean, if I may just, and this so isn't a question, it's just a comment. As you were talking through a same point of interest, I wonder when we study comedians who work at how to be funnier.
Yeah.
You never see them go in the intellectual route to, or at least rarely do I hear them say, that's what made me funnier.
Right.
That almost kills the joke, right?
Yeah.
But if I could ask about that, it was exactly the same point about contagion. Just a commentary from you, or comment back.
Sure.
I'm fascinated that blue sheets from me and from colleagues who teach very well here, more and more seem to focus on the word passion when we've done a good job. Students say,
Right.
oh, they were passionate about the cause.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that feels to you, smells to you like the same sort of contagion of flow state when we're teaching. Are we in the same ballpark? Do you know? Do you have anything to draw on?
We are in the same ballpark because
Okay.
that topic where this is based on emotional contagion. That's how they formatted that, that research, that study. They used emotional contagion theory to measure flow.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Give me a lot to think about.
Yeah. So and that I think that comes back to what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi said about flow, how there are no shortcuts. You can't, and again, it's not a recipe. You can't follow all these descriptors and have flow. It's something that just seems to happen under the right conditions. Dr. Cello.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in on contagion comment, because I think we can measure, we can talk about that in a variety of different settings. So in the group setting that you addressed with ensemble, if the person leading the ensemble is in the flow, is playing, is having that experience, then a lot of times, you know, as a chamber musician, I've experienced this. It's very rare that one person in the group has flow and the rest do not, right? So it's a collective event.
Right.
But in the lesson, as a teacher, I find, I have never polled my students about flow in a lesson, but I find if I'm focused in the teaching, not in the playing, but in the teaching, if we're tracking down a concept and if we're immersed in it, then I think that fits your definition of flow. It's not, I'm not playing,
Right.
right? But in the sense that my teaching is in the zone.
Right.
And so maybe that's something that we should delineate, the
Yeah.
differences between the two. So you don't necessarily, as a teacher, have to be playing
Right.
to
Exactly.
be in the flow.
Yeah. So it's not just flow at the instrument; it's flow in the context of the whole music lesson.
Yeah, in the 30 minutes you have that person, it's very focused, the time that we got for both of you.
Right.
Bryan has been so very timely. We do have plenty of time for questions if you want.
Sure.
Please.
Yes, sir.
As a musician, I think it's very cool that you're getting into the analysis of the groove, of the pocket. I've heard that more often used by drummers.
Right.
Where you're really on the beat, like in pocket. So I was just curious, how did you go about researching that, or did you find anything, any substantial, like, critiques or articles?
I dug, and all I found was opinion articles on what is this concept of the pocket and the groove. I didn't even find a definition. Because to some musicians, being in the pocket and being in the groove is just playing in time.
Yeah.
So it's not that mystical thing for everybody. But my brother is actually a drummer as well, and he finds flow behind the kit. And that's how he described it. He's like, I was so in the pocket in that song, you know. But yeah, I dug for, the only definition I found that it actually linked it to being in the zone was on Urban Dictionary, something which anybody can submit their own definition. So I had to go just as as being a musician and anecdotal experience and hearing other musicians in the network speaking that way.
Yeah, because like as an audio engineer, I experienced the flow mixing.
Right.
As a musician, I understand but I've heard it in a lot of like Miles Davis autobiography, Herbie Hancock jazz music.
Exactly.
Said the pocket and this so-and-so drummer was in the pocket. So if you're trying to find more musicians who are described as that might help find
Yeah.
standard definitions.
And you know what? I actually started this off intending to do primary research and do some interviews.
Yeah.
I just wasn't equipped to do it at this point in time, so I had to go back and just do the literature review. But I would like to do that eventually, actually conduct some primary research and interview people that are having these experiences. Any other questions?
Well, let me say thank you again. Thank you to mentors and supporters who've really brought a wonderful project together. Well done.
Thank you.
We do have a 5-minute break.